Hey there YouTube. So today I'm gonna be doing another commentary on a video by a user called Mother's Basement. This is gonna be pretty similar to the video I did about Bob Samurai, but this one is more of an opinion-based video than Bob's was. And, not trying to push half-truths and partial truths and idiotic justifications as facts. Plus, this video is more about how Avatar and other similar series are anime, rather than trying to just say all cartoons are anime. But since the topic is so similar between these two videos, a few points from my other video will be repeated here. Now, keep in mind, I have no personal issues with Mother's Basement himself. I actually kind of like a few of his videos, especially his What's in an OP series. That's pretty good. I just kind of disagree with this one and want to explain my points. Also, heads up, this guy does use quite a few anime clips in his video, and since I want to avoid copyright, I will have to blow those parts out, unfortunately. Although, since he used the clips with no such penalty, it should be fine for me to play his video unedited also, because I legally should be allowed to use the clip because of the Fair Use Act, but the people who run YouTube are pretty much shitheads and don't realize that and cave under the slightest pressure, even if the accusations of infringement are completely false. Sorry about that. Went on a bit of a tirade. But anyway, enough jibber-jabber. Let's get to the video.
Here's an idea. Avatar: The Last Airbender is an anime. Fuck you. Fight me.
Oh, we're off to a great start, aren't we?
On October 18th, 2016, A1 Pictures and Crunchyroll released Shelter, a short animated music video for Porter Robinson and Madeon's song of the same name. Shortly thereafter, it was posted to Reddit's r/anime community, where it would go on to become the third highest rated post in the history of the subreddit. It would also go on to be taken down because, as an r/anime mod stated, the specific definition we use to determine anime is an animated series produced and aired in Japan, intended for a Japanese audience. This is a music video by an artist that contracted out a studio that happens to also produce anime. If A1 Pictures had produced an episode of SpongeBob, we wouldn't allow that here either.
Okay, yeah, I take a lot of issue with their definition as well. They're way too strict about it and come off as somewhat elitist. Personally, I just define anime as animation from Japan. It can be a movie or a series. Just like how Western animation denotes animation from places like the US, Canada, etc. Now, as for the music video itself, honestly, it's a bit of a gray area because A1 technically is an anime company. It's based in Japan and everything. But Crunchyroll is actually headquartered in America. I don't know. Maybe it's a collaborative work, both Western animation and anime. I don't know. The line is kind of murky about web animation. Although, to me, I personally do consider anime, because Crunchyroll, in the grand scheme of things, didn't really have that huge of a part in making it. A1 Pictures did most of the work. Also, I'm going to skip ahead a bit, because he mostly just talks about the music video, and I don't care.
The takedown and reinstatement of Shelter was in itself a minor footnote in the success story of a popular and critically lauded ONA that was going to reach people with or without Reddit's help. But the flawed reasoning behind it speaks to something that is frequently a big problem for the anime community, especially for critics like myself. We don't really have a solid, workable definition of what anime is.
Okay, simply put, anime is animation from Japan. It doesn't mean any sort of style, it doesn't mean a genre, okay? Anime is simply a term to denote and separate Japanese animation from Western animation.
We have a lot of different competing definitions, some of which are technical, like
anime is a Japanese colloquialism which comes from shortening the word animation,
whereas others, like the one used by the Reddit community, are unworkably broken.
Yeah, people try to twist and butcher the definition all the time. There are people who claim only action-packed series are anime, and yes, I hate when people do that shit too. Simply put, anime is animation from Japan. That's all it is.
The definition of anime offered up by Dr. Nyan Pasu fails to hold up to scrutiny on multiple counts, to the point where I feel the need to sit down and explain patiently how words work. Let's go through it point by point and see all the ways it fails. Point 1, an animated series. Okay, we're 3 words in and already the cracks are showing. Series precludes single-shot OVAs, web shorts like Me Me Me, and movies. By this definition, Spirited Away and Your Name aren't anime. Obviously, that would be stupid, so the definition must be wrong. Point 2, produced and aired in Japan. Well, firstly, saying aired again cuts out theatrical and home video markets as well as the internet, so that doesn't work at all. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they meant distributed. I mean, the fact that they're this strict with a definition that they've worded this loosely is worrying in itself, but that's a different problem. And even making that concession, it's still awful. Produced in Japan means that we can't count shows like Bloodivores or To Be Hero, which originated in China, or any show that was outsourced to Korea, which these days is most of them.
Okay, bit of an interesting point. But the problem is, just because one part of something is outsourced to another country, it doesn't make them not anime. After all, most of the overall work is done in Japan. The writing, voice acting, storyboarding, etc. I mean, it's pretty much standard practice for a lot of big companies to outsource jobs to other countries all the time. After all, there's a lot of toy companies that outsource a majority of their manufacturing to China, but still they're headquartered in America and do most of their marketing to an American audience. But are they a Chinese company because they outsource a chunk of their work to China? No. Outsourcing a portion of the work to another country doesn't mean anything.
As for requiring that an anime be distributed in Japan, well, that would actually include SpongeBob, since it has a Japanese dub, and if you say distributed first in Japan, then you end up excluding Space Dandy, which is super wrong, so yeah, nothing about this point works.
Okay, number 1. SpongeBob is produced in America by an American company. Just because you import a product doesn't mean it's now indigenous to that area. You can import anything. Like you can import German beer to America. It's still German beer. Number 2. Space Dandy is produced in Japan by a Japanese company. Just because it was distributed to both America and Japan at the same time, that doesn't mean anything. It's still anime.
And then there's that intended for a Japanese audience bit, which is murky enough when you consider that more and more studios are aiming anime at a global audience for business purposes, but also explicitly excludes Stan Lee's Hero Man, Afro Samurai, which was a passion project for Samuel L. Jackson, and The Big O Season 2, which was only made because of Cartoon Network. All of those things are very clearly anime, and it would be beyond idiotic to say that the second season of an anime isn't an anime because it targeted a new audience and was produced by a new network.
Yeah, those people are somewhat elitist.
So with all of those clauses stricken down, the only part of the definition that remains is animated.
Sure, if you want to go by one group of people's strict requirements, rather than what it actually means. Keep in mind, they aren't the ones who dictate it. They are not an authority on the subject. All they did was make a Reddit page.
Which happens to be what the word anime means in Japanese.
Yes, that is what it means in Japan. However, our culture has pretty much termed anime to mean any animation from Japan. Words mean different things to different cultures. Sometimes other cultures will appropriate words from other languages to mean something different when said there. For example, in America, we use the phrase faux pas to mean any social error. However, in its original translation, faux pas pretty much means to stumble, to trip. But we've pretty much appropriated that phrase to mean something different.
Although, that is an interesting facet of this argument. In Japanese, anime refers to all animation, SpongeBob included, and that's an argument often used in favor of saying Avatar: The Last Airbender and shows like it should be counted as anime. But it's a weak argument, and not just because it's pedantic.
Oh, good. Never mind. I was gonna say, if that's your best argument for Avatar being considered anime, then that's just illogical. But please, tell me, how can you justify Avatar being anime? Change my mind. Also, thank you for not rehashing the whole "that's what it translates to in Japan" argument.
What this argument is really about is whether shows like Avatar should be discussed in communities like our anime, or given the spotlight at anime cons.
Nope.
And yes, by that definition, discussion of Avatar should be allowed in anime communities, but that would also allow for discussion of SpongeBob and Mickey Mouse, which most people would agree are totally off topic. And some would use that as a justification for disqualifying any American cartoon from ever being anime, which is equally pedantic and facetious.
Not really. Western animation cannot be considered anime. It just can't. Just like how we can't say Dragon Ball Z or Naruto is Western animation. Anime and Western animation are two different things.
Anime is Japanese animation, and that's that, they'll say.
Yes, because that's what it is.
Even though their acceptance of Chinese-made anime totally invalidates that position.
Interesting point. But still, whose definition are you going by? Maybe we should update the definition to include all Asian animation, not just Japan? After all, Western animation doesn't only refer to the US, it refers to all countries in this region. But still, I don't consider Chinese animation to be anime, under its appropriated meaning. But, I mean, when the phrase anime started becoming commonplace and popular in the West, it was mostly because of just Japanese animation. And at the time, most Americans couldn't even be bothered to watch Chinese or Korean-made animation.
But even if you are in the camp that says Western cartoons can never be anime, you can't pretend that there's no distinction. Because when I say the phrase American anime...
Oh god, that's so cringy. Seriously though, I've never heard that phrase American anime before. Because, really, the only people who ever call those shows anime are pretty much just hipsters who want to feel special and included.
It describes a specific group of shows, and you know exactly what shows I'm talking about. American anime is meaningfully distinct from what you'd call cartoons.
Okay, yeah, all animation is a cartoon, no matter where it's from. However, yes, those series are inspired by anime, but a lot of things are inspired by something else. Like, for example, Star Wars. There are a lot of inspiration from classic westerns in Star Wars. But Star Wars still isn't a Western. Heck, I'm inspired by Stephen King, and a lot of my writing is similar in tone and style to him, but I'm not Stephen King.
Now, you might say that the line is a little blurry.
Not really.
And you could make a good case with shorter series that use more American art styles and senses of humor, like Steven Universe and Adventure Time, which, fun fact, had an episode directed by anime director Masaki Yuasa.
Are you really trying to say that Adventure Time is an anime because the director of one episode happened to direct anime as well? That's just asinine. Because the company that made the episode is still in America. Most of the work was done in America. It doesn't mean anything that just because there was a Japanese guy that worked on an episode, that it's automatically anime.
But when you look at Japanese shows like Panty and Stocking or Kaiba, you realize that it's just as blurry over there.
Again, no. Shows like Panty and Stocking, while they do try to emulate and are heavily inspired off of Western animation, that doesn't make them Western animation, does it? As I said before, the terms anime and Western animation are used to denote country of origin. It's not a style, it's not a genre.
In fact, I would argue that there are animated series made in Japan for a Japanese audience that are not anime. At least not in the loose American sense of that word, which is largely shaped by what satisfies us when we sit down thinking, I want to watch anime, and what we deem worthy of discussion in anime communities. And when was the last time you heard an American anime fan gushing over Hello Kitty, Hanakappa, or Anpanman?
Okay, wow. This video is really stretching it. You see, those anime are kids' shows, made specifically for pandering to little kids. Like how Dora the Explorer is made specifically for kids. The only reason the majority of anime fans don't talk about them is because they want to watch stuff that's more age-appropriate for them. Seriously, I don't know many adult men in America talking about how great Dora the Explorer is. Seriously, if someone in Japan wanted to get into Western animation, the same way people in America wanted to get into Japanese animation, they likely would not watch stuff like Dora. They'd most likely try to get into something like, Family Guy or South Park. Or King of the Hill, which is my all-time favorite animated series.
If these kids shows are discussed at all, it's never in the context of, have you seen the latest episode of Sazae-san? Those shows are only ever discussed academically in things like this video. Because while you may find it interesting that Sazae-san is the longest running cartoon in the world, I doubt that any of you are actually interested in watching it.
Okay, so just because hardly anyone over the age of 5 wants to watch it, stops it from being anime? What on earth are you talking about? There's all kinds of obscure American cartoons that nobody's ever heard of. They're still American cartoons. Just because nobody cares about them doesn't make them any less of an American cartoon. And no, I have no interest in watching them either. But still, that doesn't make them not anime.
Few anime fans are, because it's not anime.
Who says? Who are these phantom people you keep referring to that don't consider them anime? Honestly, the people who argue those series aren't anime are idiots. Plain and simple. They're little kids' anime, and even though most teenagers and adults don't care about them, they're still anime. Or, are you just pulling this out of your butt as a means to justify a show you like being considered anime? I don't know, it's kind of the vibe I'm getting.
It's a cartoon for children. And if the Japanese are capable of producing non-anime cartoons,
I've never actually heard anyone say those shows are not anime. I mean, I get it. It's not what you think of when you first hear the term anime, and it's vastly different from most mainstream anime, but it's still anime. Anime for young kids, but still anime. I mean, the quality and target audience doesn't mean it's not anime. I mean, Dora is still a Western cartoon, even though it's targeted towards little kids.
and we're already allowing for shows out of Korea and China to be considered anime, then there is no good reason that anime can't be produced in North America.
Yeah, there is. It's not anime. Anime denotes country of origin, not a style, not a genre. Just like how we can't call Naruto Western animation, because it just isn't. I mean, sure, those shows do have a similar look and style, but they're still not anime. Something can look and feel similar to something else. For example, the movie The Terminator. It's largely inspired off of an old sci-fi show called The Outer Limits. Well, yes, it's very similar in style, tone, and everything, and it's pretty much just a shot-for-shot remake. It's still not the same thing. The Terminator is not The Outer Limits. Just because something looks and acts like something doesn't mean it is. I mean, say if there's a white guy who wears blackface. Is he automatically African American? And to be completely honest, if anything, the creators of Avatar are committing cultural appropriation.
Or Europe in the case of Wakfu and the Red Turtle. For a lot of people, when they get an urge to watch anime and they sit down and watch Avatar The Last Airbender or Voltron, they end up satisfied with that decision.
Okay, so because it's similar to anime and a lot of people like it, that means nothing. I mean, everyone hates School Days, but it's still an anime. Seriously though, what you're saying is like, if I said, if I like James Bond, and I want to watch Mission Impossible because they're both similar, and because they're both similar spy action movies, and, I get the same feeling watching them, does that mean Mission Impossible is now James Bond? Just because I like it? No. Mission Impossible is not James Bond.
But if we can't define anime by region, how do we define it?
By region. That's how we define it. That's literally what it refers to. The region of the world they're made in. Just because people like you want to conflate it to mean something it doesn't, that doesn't change anything.
It's tempting to say by art style, but again, shows like Panty and Stocking and Kaiba render that invalid.
Okay? Anime is not an art style, nor is it a genre.
No matter what aesthetic trappings or genre conventions you try to ascribe to anime, there is going to be a point of hard contradiction. I think that's because we've failed to recognize what anime really is.
Let me try to explain this so you can understand. Anime has to be made in Japan, or at least Asia in general. Just like how Western animation must be made in the West. I know, shocking, right?
Some see it as a genre, others as a cultural artifact, and others as almost a medium unto itself.
So just because someone sees it a certain way means nothing. Anime is a term to denote animation from Japan. That's it. Western animation and anime can be inspired by each other all they want. It makes no difference. They aren't the same thing. They're two different things, made in two different sides of the world, by two different cultures, for two completely different fan bases.
But it's none of those things. It's something else entirely. Something that is only really possible to identify with a lot of hindsight. Which is why I find it hard to fault other anime critics and fans for using those terms instead.
What anime is a movement, an artistic movement within the medium of animation, not unlike postmodernism or the French New Wave in film. Everything that makes anime, the big-eyed aesthetic, the over-the-top action, the mature themes, the overt sexuality, is a part of that movement, agreed upon collectively by animators across Japan.
Well, it would probably be more accurate to say that anime is a series of movements.
No, it denotes the region it's made in. That's all.
Post-millennial anime is very different from 90s anime, which is in turn very different from 80s anime and especially Showa-era anime.
So what? These style and demographics change constantly. That doesn't mean anything.
But there are commonalities between all of them. The anime art style, the serialized storytelling techniques, the way that anime series and movies tend to approach action and romance, the way that anime has turned cost-cutting measures into stylistic flourishes, all of these things are elements of the broader movement, not necessarily parts of the definition. And that definition is murky because, well, all movements have murky definitions.
No, it's only murky because people like you try to add shit that doesn't belong and conflate it to mean something entirely different.
You know a French New Wave film when you see it, but you can argue endlessly about what makes French New Wave, and where the movement began and ended.
Yes, it's French New Wave. But guess what? It's still French. If an American studio tries to emulate a French New Wave film, it doesn't make it a French film.
And you can argue that films influenced by that movement, like the work of Tarantino and the movie Brats, should perhaps be considered part of it. And looking at it in that light, you can very easily make the argument that American anime deserves consideration within the broader anime movement, specifically the post-millennial anime movement that presently dominates Crunchyroll.
Anime is not a movement, dude. It's a regional thing. And I'm going to skip, a lot here, because most of the rest of the video is him trying to explain how anime is a movement, even though it's not, and how the internet is bringing multiple countries and cultures together, which somehow makes non-Japanese animation anime. I don't know, the point he's trying to make is muddled and unclear.
Birth rate, the chronic lack of social interaction that has created NEETs and hikikomori, and of course the boom of light novels, but they have many influences outside of that, because like many people around the world, as much as they live in their nation, they also live on the net. And so do the Western animators making American anime like Avatar and Steven Universe. Animators who also grew up watching anime alongside Western media.
Okay, so what if an animator grew up watching anime and Western animation? I mean, if someone watches a bunch of, French films and makes a movie similar in style to those French films, is it a French film? No, it's not.
And China and Korea, and broadcast on Crunchyroll. And we should be celebrating the best of them alongside FMA, One Punch Man, and Rakugo.
So, just because they're all animators at the same time, that means nothing. You can grow up inspired by anything, but that still doesn't make you a part of it. Like, for example, let's say there's an artist in 2018 who is heavily inspired by paintings from the Renaissance period, and he paints something inspired by them. Does that make his painting a Renaissance painting? No, it doesn't.
We should be giving them pride of place at our conventions, analyzing them in our pretentious video essays, and discussing them in our communities. Not just for the sake of our own enjoyment, but because the next movement of anime creators, both in Japan and abroad, is watching these works, absorbing them, and beginning to build on them as we speak. Looking at today's anime, at all of today's anime, will give us a better idea of what tomorrow's anime will look like. That's why I think it's important to allow discussion of Avatar, Voltron, Steven Universe, and Wakfu in places like our anime. Well, partially. I think it's equally important to facilitate debates about whether the Crystal Gems could beat up the Sailor Scouts, or what rank Aang would achieve in the Hero Association, because stuff like that is fun.
And since those...
Yeah, even if they're good, they could be the greatest thing ever made. They're still not anime. Okay? I mean, we can talk about and compare them all we want, but it makes no difference. I mean, I know Avatar: The Last Airbender is probably better than some anime. Sure. Like, Avatar is objectively better than, I don't know, Aiken. It's better. Just because it's better than an anime still doesn't mean it's anime.
Discussions are so fun, and since most anime communities don't really allow them, I'd like to see those arguments happen in the comment section of this video. I mean, they probably would anyway, but I'm allowing it. Just, please, use my trust wisely, kids. No biting or hair pulling. Promise me that.
Thanks for...
Oh, thank God, this shit is finally over. The cringe was just too much. So there we have it, another hipster trying to conflate anime to mean something it doesn't. And that's it. You know, for a video titled How Avatar is Anime, there really isn't much discussion of Avatar itself. In fact, I don't even know what you were trying to say in this video, honestly. Anyway, I'll agree it wasn't as bad as Bob Samurai's video. This just comes off as a guy who really, really likes Avatar and just wants it to be a part of the community. I mean, it's a good show, yeah, but it's still not anime. I mean, King of the Hill is a good show, but that's not anime either. Although, I must say, I do like how you don't, insult people who disagree with you, like a certain other douchebag I know. I respect you for that. Plus, you didn't try to pull something out of your ass and say, all cartoons are anime. Now, I don't know if you'll ever see this video, but if you do happen to, I'd love to have a rational discussion with you about this, if you're interested. Thank you for watching. Also, good news, I have finally dropped Windows Movie Maker and switched to Adobe Premiere.